Here we go. Okay, so if I have not had the pleasure of meeting you yet, I am Mindy Stern, and I am honored to be the host of the Accelerator Job Seekers Group. If this is your first time in an Accelerator call, just put the number 1 in the chat so that I can welcome you properly. And while you're looking at the chat, hi, Susan, and Dominique, welcome, and Brandon, welcome, Anne and Bill, welcome, and Paul, welcome, CD, welcome. So glad to see you here, and you are absolutely welcome to being here with us. While you're thinking about the chat, I definitely recommend that you put your LinkedIn URL, your name, and the type of job you're looking for, maybe your location, so that you never know who is going to see you on this call or learn about you from my YouTube channel. And you definitely want to put your name out there if you want people to keep you visible and keep you top of mind. So you can put those in the chat. And you are absolutely welcome to link to me and connect with me. I'd love to talk to you through LinkedIn. I'm there every single day. And so if you'd like to connect with me, Lori is going to be putting my URL in there, so you can absolutely ask to connect with me. We started this job search group, just a brief history for you guys. We started back in 2020 during the pandemic to help job seekers have a supportive community. And since that time, we've grown from a very tiny, small but mighty group of 6 to almost 700 members. You are welcome to join our private LinkedIn group. And if you're interested in doing that, just let me know and I will certainly let you in, and you can send me a DM or just let me know in the chat that you want to join the Accelerator group. We post all of these events. I have events every single month. They're always free. There's no charge for you to come, but it is such a great community for you to be a part of and to learn from. And that's why we do that. If you and I have not spoken yet, and you would like to schedule a complimentary 30-minute strategy session with me, I am happy to do that. Just put into the chat, pick me in the chat with your name and email address, and we will make that happen sometime in the next month or so, given our different schedules. Our next call is in March, so I'd like you to mark your calendars. March 11th, my good friend G will be here. And for those of you who don't know G, she's got a really long name, but we know her as G. It's Jihan Haridi Ardanowski, who's from Dallas-Fort Worth area. She's going to share her expertise about creating visibility on LinkedIn, which is so important. She calls herself the transition magician. So if you're in transition, which she has been in many, many times, she's going to be sharing her escapades with us on March 11th. And that registration link is open and you can register for it right now if you like. Anyone who's been on my calls before knows that I always collect golden nuggets during the call, and I'm sure Paul's going to have plenty of golden nuggets to share with us. And what I do with those is I take them, and tomorrow I will create a beautiful post and we'll put it out there with the link for the replay. So in case you want to hear anything over again, you can just see the replay tomorrow. So I appreciate it when any one of you puts a golden nugget in the chat, so that helps me to know what's important to you and what you want me to talk about in future posts. And I think that's it. I'm going to introduce Paul now. I met Paul through one of Brenda Meller's VIP calls. And if you're not a member of Brenda's community, I suggest getting there because it's a great community. She also hosts once a month, the first Fridays of the month. If you need that link, I can provide that to you offline for sure. Paul is a corporate trainer, he's a career coach, and he's the author of 2 books. When we started talking about this workshop and we started talking about topics, I was immediately drawn to the topic about learning how to create success stories for interviews and beyond. And we all know how important stories are to the interview process, because if you want to differentiate yourself, you've got to be able to say what you've done in a way that makes you memorable. And if you're just going to list a bunch of, I don't know, statistics, although Sue loves statistics and how to excavate your evidence, we know that. We have to start building stories around that so we stay memorable. And that's what Paul is going to talk to us about. And that's really exciting to me. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to Paul and let him talk to you. He, by the way, says to me that he's welcoming questions throughout his presentation. So if you would like to ask a question, just raise the hand. If you see the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen, if you don't see it, it may be in your more. If you have a lot of open apps here, I see it right here, and this is what the raise hand looks like. If you see that, then please raise your hand, and then we will call on you to answer your questions.
And do you see my screen now? Because yes, I'm seeing some shaking. Okay, great. So today is not about me, but just to give you a little bit of a sense of my background. I think the two most important
but
things.
I can't hear you.
You can hear me or you cannot?
Now I can. I couldn't before.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So today is not about me, but just to give you a quick sense of why I'm here and why I think I'm qualified to talk with you all a little bit. I've been doing this for a bunch of years. I've been through 3 long-term job searches of my own. All 3 of them were between 9 and 18 months unemployed. And so I know what you're going through, and I know what it takes to be successful in a job search. And a part of that is um, looking at your job search from a project planning perspective, which is what I'm known for, is using project management techniques in your job search. So we're going to look at success stories or accomplishment stories and why they're important. We can use them all throughout our job search. That's why I think of them as the backbone of your job search. We're going to use the success stories on your resume. The accomplishment or result statements from your stories become the bullets in your resume, right? When you're networking, we need to have things to talk about with people. And your success stories are great things to bring up and show why you bring value or how you bring value to your employer. So you're going to use them in networking. And of course, in interviewing, your success stories really become the answer to just about any and every question you could possibly be asked on an interview. So, from my perspective, these are the keys to a successful job search. Now, how do we create them? So, let's look at what some of the basics are around them. First of all, they have to be measurable accomplishments. It could be qualified measurement, right? But quantifiable is so much more powerful. So we want to find ways to quantify the success or the accomplishment. And by the way, I define accomplishment as meeting 3 criteria: something you're good at, something you enjoy doing, and something you're proud to tell people about. I see some friends on the call, and I know they've heard a lot of these examples before, so I apologize for repeating them. But I use this example quite a bit when it comes to what is an accomplishment, or maybe in this case, what is not. I'm old enough that when I was in college, I could legally drink at 18 years old. And let me tell you, when I turned 18, we celebrated. And I became a really good drunk in college. I also had a lot of fun and enjoyed the drinking that I did in college. But I'm not really proud to talk about that. So it does not qualify as an accomplishment or a success, right? But I had a client who told me at 46 or 47 years old that one of her greatest accomplishments was learning how to tie her shoes at 7 years old. And you may be thinking, huh? How is that an accomplishment? Well, first off, if you know much about child development, most kids will learn to tie their shoes when they're 4 or 5 years old. So for her to not meet that benchmark, something was wrong. Turns out she had an eye-hand coordination issue. Her 2nd grade teacher recognized that, researched some ways to overcome that, gave her some exercises to do to help improve her eye-hand coordination. And within 2 or 3 weeks, she was tying her shoes like a pro. But why is that important to her job search or to an employer? And she goes on to say, well, you know, I have perseverance and persistence because even to this day, there are times when my eye-hand coordination starts to fail me. But I go back to those exercises, I practice them a little bit, and before you know it, I'm back on my game. I'm going to bring that same level of determination to the job that I do for you. So no matter what you give me to do, I'm going to find the solution and I'm going to work the solution until we've gotten past the issue permanently, right? That becomes a real powerful story to be able to tell in an interview. So your accomplishments can come from anywhere in your life, not just your work life, but they need to be measurable in some way. We need to be able to tell them very succinctly. Frankly, if we can't tell the story in less than 2 minutes, we're probably not doing a good job. And every single word that we put into those stories has to have value and meaning in order for it to be the best story possible. We want to focus on your efforts. And I speak to this specifically here because so many of the people that I work with are in management roles. And they talk about, well, my team did this, or maybe they're a part of a team and we did this. That's really great. But I don't care about what we did. What I care about as the hiring manager, what did you do? Right? So our stories need to be focused on your specific actions that you took. And it may mean, for example, if you were the leader of the team, the first thing I did was identify the key personnel to put on this team to ensure success. And then I made sure to communicate effectively with all of them so that they all were on the same page as to what needed to happen. And they all understood their role or function on the team and how their roles interacted with everyone else. With that background, I could then task them to go and do the work that needed to be done. They would then come back on a weekly basis to give us all a team update, and we were able to complete the project on time and under budget. So notice how, even though I was the manager of a team and the team did the work, how I talked about my role as the leader in that team. So the two other quick points: create pictures, right? If you can use your words to create a picture in the mind of the receiver, that's going to last far longer than anything else. So make sure that you're helping to identify a relatable experience that the listener has had that they can picture in their mind and put you in that picture. Then they'll remember who you are and what that story is about. And of course, you want to give enough detail that you hold their interest. In fact, you pique their interest, get them wanting to hear more, but you don't give them so much detail that they get bored right off the bat. So using that story that I just told of a person in leadership, a follow-on question that might bring is, wow, tell me how you decided who were the right people to put on this team. Now you have a chance to give more information and tell maybe another story because they're engaged in the conversation. So that's some of the key elements to how we create a successful success story. Does anybody have a question right now? And I've seen a lot of stuff happening in the chat, so that's really, really great. I just don't want to, I want to make sure I don't miss anything there. Okay. So you can find some of this in my book, but we'll talk about that in another time. Some of the things, okay, are you missing the team mindset? So Vasu, explain that for a second.
Should I talk?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, okay. Well, they're always saying collaboration, team mindset. Are we really doing that then? If I keep saying I did this and I did this. I didn't
Well,
do everything with the government, but I made some changes that made the audit go through. How do you do
right,
that?
right. So notice how, as the team leader in my example, right, I was talking about how I directed the team to get the work done, but it was the team that was doing the work. So I was telling you what my function, my role was, but I was making it the team activity. Now, if you happen to be a team member, you might be able to say something like, well, I was a part of a team that had to accomplish ABC. My function was to manage this aspect of the project. And I did this and I did that and then I did the other thing. And then we came together as a team. We did these things. We validated each other's work, made sure that it would all work together. Then I went back and did this and then that and the other thing. And then we came back together. And by the time we were done, we came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Right. So you're still talking about what you did, but you're talking about it in the context of the entire team. So you can show how you collaborate with the team while also doing your own work. Is that helpful? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So one of the things we want to do to start with is make sure that we've got some basic knowledge and understanding, especially if we're making a career transition of the industry and the organization that we're going to be talking to or wanting to get into for an interview, or even better, actually interviewing with. We need to know enough about them, whether it's the industry or the organization, or maybe even the individuals, that we can speak directly to their wants and their needs. You know, here's a nugget for you, Mindy. Right? I always say there's one rule to job search. And the rule is your job search is not about you. Your job search is about the hiring manager. Now, some people, challenge me on that, but here's my perspective. As the candidate, everything that I say, everything that I do, everything that I put in writing has to be done in a way that it speaks directly to the hiring manager. Right? It's all about what that person needs and wants. And the better job I do of addressing their issues, the more likely they're going to see me as the solution to their problem. And that's what I always want to do. That even includes when you're working, right? Because today's employment model is such that the day you stop being a problem solver for me is the day that I'm going to let you go and bring in someone else who can solve my problems. So we as employees and as candidates have to always be seeking out what is the boss's most pressing need, what is their next most pressing need, and how can I show them that I'm the person that can solve that need for them. Right? So it's not about me, it's about them. So in researching, we need to know enough that we can address their wants, their needs, their concerns, and then choose the stories and experiences from our background that best fit those addressing those needs and wants. I talked for a minute already about the accomplishments, something you're good at, you enjoy doing, you're proud to tell. And what I like to suggest is we want to have at least 15 or 20 stories in our back pocket. This way, we've got an answer for almost anything. In truth, we probably should have more than that. In fact, I suggest to my clients, you want to have 5 to 10 stories you can tell from just about every decade that you're alive. Now, that doesn't mean I got to, oh my God, scramble and figure out what the hell are 10 stories I can tell from 0 to 10 years old. No, no, no. But if, as in my case, I'm 60 years old, I should probably have somewhere between 40 and 60 stories from my accomplishments in the past. The older I get, the more accomplishments I should have. Some career coaches suggest that for every quarter that you've worked, you should have at least one accomplishment. So a great place to go to figure out what are my accomplishments is to your past job performance or annual reviews. Probably have a list in there of some of your accomplishments. And truthfully, you want to ensure that your manager is listing at least one accomplishment for every quarter or 4 accomplishments for the year in your annual review. And you need to remind them of that because they're not going to remember them, right? So we want to be tracking all of our accomplishments. Now, not everybody's going to have that many. That's why I'm not saying it's a hard and fast rule. Right? In fact, there are no other rules in job search than it's not about you, it's about the boss. Everything else in job search is a best practice. Right? So think about all the different aspects of your life and what are the different accomplishments you've had in your life, throughout your life, in all those different places. I'm sure if you put your mind to it, you can come up with at least 20. If you're beyond 30, 40 years old, you probably should be able to come up with even more. And if you can't, don't worry about it. Start tracking them today. Start today with looking at your current performance evaluations and each one that goes on going forward, and then start tracking those now. Right? So a lot of places and ways that we can get these accomplishments from. Any questions or comments on this? Yes, Gregory, go ahead. You're muted. And I know that's rude. I apologize. I should have said,
okay.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Nice that you acknowledge the old school raise hand feature, so it will be much more. But the thing is, I understand that people want you, hiring managers want to see accomplishments on resumes and interviews. But as a person who is neurodivergent, and how I will say the employment game is not so, let's say, quote unquote, friendly to people who are neurodiverse.
Yep.
How in the bleep, and I could use stronger language, but we're on a Zoom call and this is being recorded.
Yep.
How can people like me stand out? Well, it's basically, I will say, since this is the home of the Winnipeg Jets hockey club,
So
I'm on basically a 2-man disadvantage for a 2-minute power play per se. So
Gregory, let's do 2 things. Number 1, what I want to say to you is that I suspect there are more things that you have accomplished than you are giving yourself credit for. And I've worked with quite a few neurodivergent people, in particular those on the Asperger's or autism spectrum and those with ADHD. So I know that there are things that neurodivergent people have as accomplishments that they don't even recognize. And the second thing is, let's talk offline and maybe we can figure out some of the answers to that for you specifically. Okay. Good thought, though. Any other questions?
Vasu had another question.
Go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, this is Vasu. Yeah, so I'm asking. I have computerized interviews, and I know there is bias with that. They say, oh, you should always be smiling at the camera. I mean, I need to look what I'm doing. How do you deal with that? With HireVue and Wonderlic and all those computerized where AI actually reviews you.
So I'm going to keep my response specific to success stories. Okay.
All right.
Because there's a whole lot that we can talk about in terms of how do you deal with the AI generated interview process. But specific to success stories, the key here is going to be whatever question they're asking you, you want to use a success story as the response.
Okay.
Right? And if you're doing that, number one, keeping the eye contact with the camera, smiling is going to be easy. And because you're talking about your own success, you're going to be more excited, energetic, and happy to share it because it's something you're proud to talk about. Right. So we want to keep everything
Makes sense.
focused in that space. Is that
Okay,
helpful?
makes sense. Yes, yes, very, very helpful. And thank you for putting it together.
Sure.
And Paul, I'm going to add one thing for Vasu, if
Good.
anyone else has a question.
Yeah.
When you speak from the heart about something that you actually accomplished, you don't need to refer to your notes as much
That's
because
right.
you've lived it. It's in your memory bank. And what Paul is talking about, and what I recommend to all of my clients, is to prepare stories in advance. So if your goal is 5 or 10, or as Paul said, an amazing 20 number of stories, build them out in advance. You're going to be using those interchangeably at every interview you're going to use. You're going to be
Yes.
intertwining them in every networking event. You need to bring up your memories of the things that you've accomplished over the years. And so once you create it and get it down on paper, then you are able to speak to it intelligently because it's going to come from your heart. And that's going to make a big difference in the people that you speak to. They're going to feel it and they're going to know it, and they're going to know that you earned it, that you didn't just make this up from ChatGPT. It's something that actually happened to you in your life.
And that's the authenticity that we need to show in everything we say or do in our job search anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a great point, Mindy. Thank you. Leanne, a quick question, and then I want to keep moving forward.
Just an FYI, regarding just creating these success stories ahead of time. FYI, one of the best interviews I've ever had happened to the fact that, one, to Mindy's point, it was something that was truly meaningful to me. But also what happened that I had the success story kind of ahead of time was that I actually answered like 2 or 3 of their questions in just that one response.
Yes.
So it was kind of
Yes.
like, oh, and the other interviewer said, oh, do you have questions about, another question for whatever? Nope, I'm good, and they just kept rolling along with it, so keeping those ahead of schedule, really helps to, I think, definitely like minimize your anxiety, but also really speak to, as Mindy and Paul say, that passion and that personal influence, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Leanne. And I love the personal experience of what you shared. So thank you for that. And it's good to see you. I hope I see you tomorrow on the Wednesday call too.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. Yeah.
All right. So when we're telling our stories, when we're trying to choose the stories we want to tell, compare your list of stories to the job description. And you can pick and choose which one is the one that's going to be most appropriate, or which 5 or 10 are the ones that are going to be most appropriate. I actually, to be honest, have a file folder in my computer that has 150 different stories in it that I've been accumulating over the last 25, 30 years of my work life, right? So, if you do this on a regular and consistent basis, you'll find that you have a lot of stories. And interestingly, there are stories that go back to my first job out of college 40 years ago that I still once in a while will refer to if it's appropriate for the job that I'm applying to. So you never know when those stories may be of value, but I don't remember the details of that story from 40 years ago. Since I have it written down, when I read it, it's like, oh my God, it comes right back as if it was yesterday. And now I can retell it using that authentic self that Mindy was talking about, giving the excitement and energy and enthusiasm that it deserves. And people are like, holy crap, Paul, you're amazing. And that's what we want. Right? We want that response from people. Okay. So you've heard this before. I'm sure most of you have seen the different acronyms about how to tell stories, right? The CAR or PAR or STAR acronym. Some people will add the benefit or value, the CARB or V. Recently, and I kind of like this, some career coaches have been saying put the results first and then tell the rest of the story. That doesn't sit well for creating the acronym, right? But I like the idea of, when you're telling your stories, start with, well, here's the result that I got. Now you've grabbed their attention with that wow factor, And then you go into, here's the situation, the task, and the actions that I took. And if you can add a specific benefit or value to the employer that you're talking to, even better still, right? So the process is essentially the same for all of them. We're going to start with the challenge, the problem, or the situation and task. And that should be one, maybe two sentences. And this is a place where I see people go wrong in their storytelling. They spend 2-3 paragraphs, a full minute of their time setting up the situation. Now you don't have time to talk about your actions or results, right? So keep that setup, the challenge, the problem, the situation or task, one, maybe two sentences. Then you're going to go into the action steps you took. And those action steps should be a paragraph, 5, maybe 10 sentences that tells the reader or the listener everything they need to know to say, yeah, this person knows what they're talking about. They actually did this. And then you finish with a one sentence result or one sentence result followed by a one sentence benefit or value. And now you've got that punch of the wow factor back in, and they're going, I need to hire this person. So let's take a look at what a story might look like. So here are 3 potential options, for example, of the challenge or the situation and task. My customer needed to customize a piece of off-the-shelf software to their needs prior to a new product launch in 3 months. Now, I don't need to go into why they needed the off-the-shelf software, why it needed to be customized, what was their problem they were trying to solve with this off the shelf. None of that is important right now. All the listener needs to know is I needed to help this customer customize this off the shelf software and get it done in less than 3 months, right? I was taking over a client job that was projected to be 30% over budget and needed to get the project back on track. We don't need to talk about why it's over budget. The fact is, this is why I was called in to deal with that situation, right? Short and sweet. Research and development was research and development developed what seemed like a promising new drug. I was asked to lead the clinical human trials portion of the development. Short and sweet, one sentence, 2 tops. From there, then we're going to go in and talk about the actions that we took, right? So I needed customize the off-the-shelf software. I first assembled the team, including an end user rep, 2 of our developers, the vendor rep, and other stakeholders. We met for an extensive meeting to scope out the project, determined to use an agile DevOps methodology, and develop the 5 key milestone points of the project while negotiating the timeline to accomplish the milestones. I next reviewed the project plan Gantt chart with my management, finance, and DevOps leaders to gain their buy-in and approval of the plan. Once we had the go-ahead, I scheduled and held weekly 30-minute progress meetings with the team, reviewed their daily workload to ensure they had the time to do the work. When needed, I held 5-minute daily stand-up meetings to reported weekly status updates to all involved. Ultimately, we made a few adjustments to the timeline without extending our due date. So here I talked about what did I do to manage and lead this team? A paragraph. And then we're going to finish with those results. Because of my active leadership combined with persuasively involving all the stakeholders, we successfully brought the project in 4 business days early and 5% under budget. The client was so impressed, here's the value, with how we managed the process, they gave us 3 more projects to do the following year. Now, if I were to read that through straight from challenge to value, it would take less than 2 minutes to tell. And what are you thinking after hearing that story? Wow. Turned a project around 5% under budget and faster than intended? I want somebody to do that. And as Leanne alluded to, look at all that you learned about this person by the action steps they took. Do you feel like they know and understand project planning, project management? And I'll admit, maybe not quite agile process, but maybe, just I made this up. So I'm not an agile coach. I don't know. I think I got it right, but you see how powerful this can be. Questions after hearing this example? I'm going to give you a different example. Yes, go ahead, Leanne, real quick.
Just as far as the results in that, right? You're mentioning that in some cases people put the results first and then whatever, is that the grabber then? Like, do you then say, oh, okay, well, let me put that result first, just to kind of get their attention or, whatever. What's your take on that?
I'm warming up more and more to starting with the result. So the way I might tell this story would be, oh, well, thank you for asking about my project management skills. I remember a project that I was responsible for where we were able to finish the project 5% under budget and almost a week early. And here's how I did that. The situation was that we had this off-the-shelf software that needed to be modified within 3 months. So what I did was boom, 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 boom. The client was so impressed with what we did, they ended up giving us 3 more projects to do in the following year. So you could go either way with it. The key is that you have at least the 3 pieces: the challenge or situation task, the actions, and the results. If you have the benefit or value to add in there, all the better. Good question. Any others?
Quick question. I understand talking about the results, but would the client be just lost? Will the hiring manager be lost? Like I'm saying, well, I stopped the audit from, I made a difference so that there was no audit findings for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, right?
So I've been through government audits myself in a couple of jobs that I was on, right? And so, I might say, oh, we had our annual audit from the government coming in on the project. And so my responsibility was to prep the team for the audit and prep the documentation for the audit. So the first thing that I did was make sure that the team understood what all the audit parameters were, so that as they were doing their work throughout the year, they were addressing those issues. I also set up some checks and balances so that every time a project was completed, before it was filed away, we audited ourselves to make sure that there were no T's that were missing and I's not dotted, just so that we had everything as prepared as possible beforehand. When the auditors arrived, I had prepared the documentation in an orderly fashion, simplified it so that they could find everything they needed easily. I had reviewed all the documentation to see if there were any things that we missed and fixed that ahead of time. And then I made sure that I was available to them so that if they had questions, I never kept them waiting and was able to get their answers immediately. They were able to finish the audit a little bit faster than they expected, and they did have 3 or 4 questions, which I was able to address immediately. Those answers were satisfactory. By the time we were done, they gave us the verbal report back that they had no findings. A week later, we got the formal report that showed there were no findings. In fact, I did that 3 years consecutively, that we had no findings because of the preparation work that I did. Okay.
I need to write down this. This is exactly what I did, and I want to kind of have the correct words.
And that's why I strongly recommend that you write down your success stories as they occur, because then you can do some wordsmithing, either with a friend or a trusted colleague or your career coach, and make sure that you've got it as tight as possible, as clear and concise as possible. Every word has value, and you're meeting all the requirements for any question that would be asked about that story. Now, when you need to tell it, you just go review it before the interview, and you're ready to tell and share that story. What other questions? Al, it's so great to see you here. Thanks for adding. Have you ever? Employer asks, have you ever, by starting with the results, you are hoping the person asks for more, at which time you can tell the story entirely. Yep. I like that thought process too. Thanks, Al. By the way, Al's another great coach. There are a lot of great coaches on this call today. I think I saw Jeff Altman pop in too. So any other questions on this? All right, so I was hoping to have some time for us to actually do a breakout session, but I unfortunately I don't have the time to do that. So what I'd like to just do is review at the moment, right? We're going to use these in our resume, in our networking, in our interviews. We're going to be succinct and memorable. We're going to be interesting. We're going to use accomplishments that talk about something you're good at, you have fun doing, and that you're proud to talk about. You're going to use that star or car format, and we're going to practice them, but not memorize them. Because once they're memorized, they're not going to sound authentic. They're going to sound like you're reading something you memorized. Right? But we want to be familiar enough with them that we can just talk through them. And then once you've got the stack of stories available, prior to an interview, you're going to just go through and select the stories that are going to be the most appropriate for that particular interview. Any last questions that anybody has? These are some of the groups that I do facilitate. I was talking to Leanne about seeing her tomorrow at the professional support group of Morris County, which, like this group, is a speakers group, and it meets on Zoom at 9:30 Eastern time. These other groups are actually more peer accountability groups. And what I like about those, everybody on the call will get 10 minutes to share what's going on in their job search and pose a question to the group. And then the remainder of your 10 minutes time is the group brainstorming solutions to your problem. And people love that because they get to feel heard, they get to feel support, they get to offer advice, so they feel good about that. And in the end, everybody learns from each other. So it's a great format, and people just love it. You can see they're kind of geared towards specific groups or individuals, but if there's any one of them that are appropriate for you, just let me know. I'll be happy to get you the contact information and the Zoom link for those.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a few moments. I'm wondering if we have anyone on the call that's brave enough and would like some feedback on their story or any stories that they might tell.
Absolutely.
So, if you'd like to unshare so that we can see each other, then maybe we'll have some people who would like to get some feedback.
Yep.
And his hand right now.
Great, Michael. Just a second. I'll take down the slides. But just so everybody has access to my contact information, I've put it in the chat as well a couple of times, including just right now. So you have access to that. So Michael, go ahead. Share your story.
Yeah, Paul, this is very helpful. So I have a question for you. So I'm an investment banker. I'm out of New York City, and I started my own firm a few months ago, and just kind of getting that off the top. But I'm interviewing with a firm that's pretty interesting. I've been talking with this firm for a year and a half. It's started and stopped. So I talked to the guy who's the hiring manager, had a very good conversation with him last week. So long story short, there was one guy that I interviewed with, who's a young guy, probably in his 30s, mid 30s. he was, kind of cocky. And, I have quite a bit of experience and know quite a bit much more than him. And I was deferential to him. But any thoughts on doing that? I may have to interview with him again. So any thoughts about how to approach somebody like that who's younger, a little cockier, and, is probably potential a roadblock to getting hired?
And I'd love to hear any other coach that wants to chime in on this, but I think my guidance to you would be simply, without necessarily being deferential, your focus always wants to be on how can I help you? Right? What can I do for you? Okay. How can I solve your problems? Now it's not about I'm smarter than you or I'm dumber than you or I'm going to come in and take over your job, right? It's about how am I doing what I can to support you and support the mission so that we are both successful. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's helpful because on this one, it would be running a group, and he was kind of doing the interim role. So I represent a threat to him because I've run groups like this before and have a lot of experience doing it. So
good.
I think that's helpful.
I don't know, Mindy, if you or any of the other coaches might have another thought you want to add to that.
So Michael, it's always about them. I think that's how Paul started this conversation about, right? It's always about them. And so the more you know about what his pain points are, the more you know about what challenges he's been facing, the better you can respond appropriately. And so knowing that, and maybe you know that from having other conversations, it sounds like you've spoken to a number of people in this area, might help you to frame it correctly. Does that make sense?
No, that's good. That's helpful. That's very helpful.
And Mindy, I see Al Smith raised his hand, and Al's a great coach from Atlanta. So go ahead, Al.
Atlanta, welcome, Al. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. A little cooler here than it was yesterday. But there was an article in the Guardian a few years back that I used in a book that it's a perception that younger managers won't want an older person to work on their team, or they won't work well. So a couple of ideas. I've successfully worked for managers younger and older than me. My experience has been that the entire team is better when there's a mix of ideas, and I can't wait to start working with you. Or I've worked on teams with people of different ages, genders, and ethnicities, and our results have won awards. I feed off the energy of diverse groups, don't you?
Yeah, no, that's
great kinds of answers.
So bringing them in. I love
it. And with the assumptive close at the end, you want them to ask questions again.
Yeah.
Love that, Al. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Leanne will be my last question because I do have a hard stop in 5 minutes. Leanne, go ahead.
As far as, because he had mentioned, the personalities that happen. I get how you're there to, hey, how can I help you? Okay. But what if you're dealing with somebody who, like he said, considers you a threat to some degree, and not only that, but has and I've dealt with this, who has what do I say, almost like afraid to bring you in on anything because then, oh my gosh, then you have knowledge and no, you can't possibly have that. You know what I'm saying? How do you deal with that? Because you have to get your work done. You have to be a value of these teams and whatever. And yet it's not happening because this person's,
So I never want to be one to, quickly and offhandedly just say, oh, well, I don't want to work there. But I think the simple or the fast answer here is if these other techniques have not worked and this person is still responding in such a way that you're a threat, then it's probably not a good match and you probably want to move on to somewhere else.
Okay.
And by the way, for everyone, you are not going to be the right match for every single job that you apply to. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. You only need one job right now. So you are not going to be the right fit. And the interview should be a dialogue. You need to find out as much about that company as they're finding out about you. Because the worst thing that will happen is you're going through all this effort, and we all know what you're going through, the building the resumes and creating the LinkedIn profile and talking to career coaches and listening to all these people and so much advice and applying. how horrible to do all that and get into a role that actually is not a good fit for you, that you actually hate, and we need to start all over again.
Yeah.
So definitely use that time as a dialogue. It should not just be a battery of questions at you and just responding and not asking good questions back. We haven't talked at all about asking those great questions so that you can learn more about that organization, to decide if this is a good fit for you. And maybe that's another call, you know. And
I was going to say, it sounds like you maybe want to do a conversation on different interview scenarios and how to manage them.
yeah,
But today was specifically about the stories you're going to tell and the successes that you're going to share with the employers that helps them to see the value you bring.
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Mindy, thank you so much. I have had a great time. I wish I could stay longer with you all, but this was a fantastic opportunity. Love the pom-pom, Sue. Thank
Yay,
you.
Sue, thanks for bringing them.
And I hope you all have good luck and are speedy in getting your job. If there's anything I can do to help you, two things I tell everybody is, number one, our first conversation is always at no cost. And number two, if it's a quick conversation, you know, you have a quick question like some of the ones that were just asked, and we can answer them in 5 or 10 minutes. For God's sake, please reach out and ask your question. I'd rather you get the answer and move forward in your job search than flounder and not. And I never charge for a quick question like that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Y'all have a great
That's
day.
very generous of you, Paul. Very generous.
And very,
Thank you, Mindy.
very, so thankful to you, Paul, for spending the time with us and sharing your knowledge with us. So amazing. And thank you to all the wonderful coaches we have on this call. I'm going to miss some. We have Kenneth Lang and Shelley's here, and Sue and Al and Paul, of course. Who did I miss? Jeff was on for a while. I don't know if I see him still, but Jeff Young was on for a while. But I thank you all for being here and for supporting our job seekers. That's what we're here for. And as Paul said, we are all available and want to be helpful to you. And so if you need to reach out,
Mindy,
absolutely.
one quick thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one
course.
just quick thing. Listen, if any of you want a copy of the slides, I'm very happy to share those with you. All you have to do, though, is reach out to me directly to receive them. So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat one last time. But anyone who wants the slides, by all means, just reach out and I'll be happy to share them with you. Okay, I'm
Excellent.
dropping now. Thanks, Mindy.
And
Bye-bye.
there will be also the replay will be in a video. Our replay will be on YouTube, and I will have that posted tomorrow. Watch for my post for tomorrow, and you'll see the link for the video in that. Okay. We hope to we'll see you next month when G comes and shares a story about creating greater value and visibility. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for joining.
much. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Good seeing you all.
Good to see you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Paul.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Quite welcome, everyone.